Deep in the heart of Australia, beyond the red deserts and ancient stone ridges, lies a mystery the world was never meant to uncover. For decades, scientists believed they understood where humanity began: Africa, then Asia, then the rest of the world. But when geneticists studied the DNA of Australia's Aboriginal people, they found something that shattered the entire map of human history. It wasn't just old, it was older than anyone expected, tracing back tens of thousands of years before other civilizations even existed. Inside that DNA were echoes of an ancient encounter with a lost human species long vanished from the earth. For years, this discovery was ignored, buried in academic papers, quietly dismissed. But the evidence keeps growing, and the truth refuses to stay hidden. This is the mystery of the Aboriginal DNA, Australia's darkest secret and its most ancient truth. The story begins here, in the ghostly remains of the ancient ones we call Mungo Man and Mungo Woman, whose skeletons were discovered in the Willandra Lakes, New South Wales in the late 20th century. Their footprints, etched in fossilized sand, date to around 40,000 years ago. And yet their DNA whispers of a journey far earlier. In 2011, researchers sequenced a genome from a 100-year-old hair sample taken from a Southwest Australian Aboriginal man. The results astonished. His ancient lineage diverged from the ancestors of most Asians around 62,000 to 75,000 years ago, making Aboriginal Australians one of the oldest continuous human populations outside Africa. And inside that genome lay a whisper, a small yet unmistakable imprint of a vanished human cousin, the Denisovan, an archaic human species first identified in Siberia, whose genetic legacy lives on in Aboriginal and Papuan peoples alike. So ask yourself, if the Aboriginal story began not on the coastal fringe of modern Australia, but in a world already ancient when the sun first warmed this land, why has it been so quietly hidden? The continent we call Australia was not always an island. During the last ice age, sea levels sank by as much as 120 meters, uniting the landmass of Australia, Tasmania, and New Guinea into a giant supercontinent called Sahul. It is here in this frozen, windswept land where the earliest human explorers made landfall, not as colonizers, but as the world's original settlers. Genetic evidence now suggests that Aboriginal Australians' male lineages, Y chromosome haplogroups such as CM347, SP308, and KM526*, are at least 40,000 years old, indicating they arrived and remained isolated for tens of millennia. As night falls on the red dust, the stars wheel above, and among them a memory, a people who carried within them the code of a migration older than any other full nation on Earth. The stage has been set, the whispers of genes and legends align. What comes next is the journey inward, into the land, the bodies, the blood of Australia's first people. But to find their origin, we must leave the Australia we know and return to a world that no longer exists. A world called Sahul, a supercontinent that once joined New Guinea, Tasmania, and Australia beneath a single sun. It was across this ancient land that the first humans outside Africa found their way, somewhere between 65,000 and 70,000 years ago. According to a 2017 study published in Nature, stone tools discovered at Majidbebe in the Northern Territory date to at least 65,000 years ago, pushing back the timeline of human arrival by nearly 20,000 years beyond earlier estimates. These were the earliest navigators, long before recorded civilization. They crossed stretches of open ocean, perhaps on rafts woven from mangrove reeds, to reach new shores no human had ever seen. Scientists say this feat makes the Aboriginal ancestors the world's earliest known seafarers. Their descendants spread across the continent, through rainforest and desert, over mountains and swamp, creating an unbroken chain of cultures that adapted to every ecosystem on Earth's driest inhabited continent. When glaciers melted and the seas rose again, the land bridge of Sahul disappeared beneath the waves. The isolation that followed, tens of thousands of years without outside contact, would shape the Aboriginal genome into something found nowhere else on Earth. Today, when scientists study the Aboriginal genome, they find ancient markers like haplogroup CM347, found almost exclusively in Australia. Other lineages, SM230, KM526, trace back to a single migration that left Africa before the ancestors of East Asians and Europeans even diverged. In simple terms, this means the Aboriginal genetic line is not a branch of Asia's story. It is a parallel route, a separate chapter of humanity, evolving in solitude for more than 60,000 years. Every star overhead burned when their ancestors arrived. Every river beneath carried their reflection. And through this immense span of time, ice ages, droughts, extinctions, no civilization elsewhere on Earth kept so long and so intimate a bond with one land. For Aboriginal Australians, the land is not owned. It is alive. The Dreamtime, or Chukurpa, is not a myth of the past, but a map of the eternal present. It explains how the land itself was sung into being, how ancestors became the hills, the rivers, the animals, the stars. Anthropologists once dismissed these as legends, but now scientists studying oral traditions and sea level data are finding astonishing precision in Aboriginal stories. One narrative from coastal Queensland describes the sea rising to swallow sacred hunting grounds, an event that geological studies date to nearly 7,000 years ago when melting ice flooded the continental shelf. Science catches up to memory. Their culture remembers changes the rest of the world forgot. Visuals, cave paintings, ochre hands pressed against rock walls. The art tells the same story, figures of megafauna long extinct, layered with newer symbols. At sites like Nawarla Gabarnmang in Arnhem Land, rock shelters show continual human use for more than 45,000 years, generation after generation painting their existence onto stone. To stand there is to stand in the oldest living gallery on Earth. When researchers compared Aboriginal genomes with those of other populations, they found traces of an ancient rendezvous between our species and another. Around 50,000 years ago, somewhere in Southeast Asia, the ancestors of Aboriginal Australians interbred with Denisovans, archaic humans known from fossils in Siberia's Denisova Cave. Geneticists from the Australian Centre for Ancient DNA and Max Planck Institute found up to 6% Denisovan ancestry in Aboriginal and Papuan peoples, more than any other population on Earth. This suggests their ancestors met Denisovans far from Siberia, possibly in the tropical forests of Indonesia, long before they reached Sahul. Scientific American described this as evidence that the Aboriginal genome is like a time capsule, holding fragments of humanity's deeper evolutionary branches that elsewhere have vanished. In the mitochondrial DNA, the maternal line, haplogroups M42 and S2 stand out, both unique to Australia. These maternal signatures link directly to the first women who ever set foot on this continent. Every Aboriginal mother today carries echoes of that first journey, uninterrupted by conquest or mass migration. Theirs is not just the oldest culture, it is the oldest genetic continuity known to science. And so, in that double helix lies the oldest unbroken song on Earth. The Aboriginal genome, ancient, untouched, carrying the memory of the world before memory itself. While empires rose and fell elsewhere, while continents shifted under the weight of civilization, here, in the vast silence of the southern land, humanity endured. But isolation, though sacred, would soon become its own test. The Earth was changing again. The sea was coming for the land. When the Ice Age ended roughly 12,000 years ago, the frozen oceans began to melt. Water reclaimed the lowlands, swallowing valleys and rivers that had once connected whole nations. What was once Sahul, one vast human world, began to break apart. Around 10,000 years ago, Tasmania was cut off from the rest of Australia. The sea rose like a closing curtain, isolating its people from all others on Earth. For the next 400 generations, they would live and die without ever seeing another human beyond their island. To archaeologists, that isolation is astonishing. Yet even without outside contact, the Tasmanian Aboriginal people survived through ice, wind, and endless winter. They hunted with tools of stone and fire-hardened wood. They wore sealskin and possum cloaks against the cold, and carved their stories into the dark of cave walls. Soft ambient strings begin, solemn and spacious. Scientists once thought Tasmania had lost technology, But the truth, as anthropologist Rhys Jones later argued, was far deeper. They had adapted perfectly to their world. They needed no invention, because their world was already enough. Across the mainland, their kin endured the same transformation. Droughts deepened, deserts spread, but the people adapted again, managing the land through controlled fire, a practice we now call fire stick farming, one of the earliest forms of environmental engineering. With it, they shaped ecosystems, coaxing grasslands to grow where dense forest once stood, drawing kangaroo and emu for the hunt. Long before Europe dreamt of trade, Aboriginal nations were already linked by networks that spanned thousands of kilometers. Ochre from the Kimberley traveled south. Shell beads from the coast found their way into the desert. The roots that carried these gifts weren't roads. They were songlines, sung paths of memory and belonging. They traded not good, an anthropologist once said, but relationships. In the stillness of isolation, 1,000 nations thrived, each speaking its own language, each guided by ancestral law, all connected by the hum of the land beneath their feet. It was a harmony so complete that, for more than 50,000 years, there was no war large enough to scar the continent's memory. Yet even the deepest silence cannot last forever. Beyond the northern horizon, winds were shifting. Sails of a different world were catching the sun, and with them would come an ending and a forgetting. The dreaming had survived isolation, fire, and time itself, but it was about to meet something it had never known before: conquest. In 1770, Captain James Cook sighted the eastern coast of Australia. To his empire, it was terra nullius, nobody's land. But to the hundreds of nations already living here, it was home, the center of all creation, alive with story and spirit. Cook's arrival at Botany Bay marked more than a voyage of discovery. It marked the beginning of erasure. Within a generation, the oldest living culture on Earth was declared invisible. When the first fleet landed in 1788, over 1 million Aboriginal people inhabited the continent, speaking more than 250 languages, each tied to sacred geography. Within a century, most would vanish, not by war alone, but through disease, displacement, in a system that refused to see them as human. Missionaries and settlers rewrote their stories. Lands were seized under colonial law that called the inhabitants primitive. The Dreamtime was dismissed as a myth, and the great silence of isolation turned into the silence of suppression. In 1869, the first Protection Acts were passed. Their purpose, the officials said, was to civilize and protect. But protection meant control, where Aboriginal people could live, whom they could marry, what language they could speak. Whole generations of children were torn from their families. A tragedy now remembered as the stolen generations. They took away our tongues, one elder said, so that our stories would die before we did. Even in death, they were not left in peace. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, scientists from Europe and Australia collected Aboriginal remains, skulls, bones, even hair samples, shipped to museums under the banner of research. They measured skull shapes, seeking to prove theories of racial hierarchy. They called it science, but it was desecrated. In archives from Cambridge to Berlin, thousands of Aboriginal ancestors were displayed as specimens, their humanity reduced to data, their story rewritten through the lens of empire. Yet even in those dark years, the bloodline endured. The genome and the memory written in the body could not be conquered. Long after the empires faded, those same bones, those same fragments of hair would speak again, not of inferiority, but of continuity. In the 21st century, when those ancient samples were re-examined, scientists found what colonization had tried to erase, a genetic thread stretching unbroken across 60,000 years. This is the world's longest surviving civilization, said geneticist Eski Willerslev, who helped map the Aboriginal genome. It tells us that the story of modern humans cannot be told without them. The truth had outlived the lie. Despite every attempt to erase them, the first Australians remained, living testaments to the oldest song ever sung by humanity. Time, like the land, began to heal, slowly, unevenly, but with purpose. The wind that once carried sorrow now carried whispers of return. What was taken would find its way home. The bones would speak. The stories would rise again. In the quiet years after the millennium, something began to change. The same institutions that once took Aboriginal remains now sought to return them. From the basements of Oxford, Berlin, and Melbourne, crates were opened, not as exhibits, but as ancestors. They called it repatriation, but to the people it was resurrection. One by one, bones wrapped in cloth were carried back to country, to the riverbeds and dunes where they had first been laid down tens of thousands of years ago. The ceremonies were solemn, yet radiant. Smoke, song, and tears intertwined beneath a sun that had witnessed every age of man. In 2016, a team from the University of Adelaide and the Max Planck Institute decoded the full genome of a 40,000-year-old Aboriginal man from Lake Mungo. His DNA told a story untouched by later migrations, a lineage separate from all others, diverging soon after humans first left Africa. It's continuity on a scale we've never seen, said geneticist Dr. Alan Cooper. They are direct descendants of the first modern humans to walk this land, and they've stayed ever since. Lake Mungo was no longer just an archaeological site. It was a voice from before history, confirming what Aboriginal elders had always said. We have been here since the dreaming began. For decades, Western science had doubted such oral histories, treating them as myth, as metaphor. But the genome said otherwise. The DNA matched the stories. Science bowed to the memory of the land. Across Australia, a new generation of Aboriginal scientists and linguists began to reclaim what was lost. Ancient languages, once silenced by colonial policy, returned to classrooms and songlines. Words like Ngura, home, Bubu, earth, Bayame, creator, echoed again, not as relics, but as living knowledge. In Arnhem Land, elders recorded sacred stories of stars and creation that mapped perfectly onto modern astronomy. Constellations, eclipses, even the motions of the planets. Our ancestors didn't need telescopes, one elder said. They had the sky. The recovery of memory wasn't only spiritual, it was scientific, linguistic, biological. It was the realization that all knowledge, no matter how different its language, leads back to the same truth, that life endures when it belongs to the land. The Aboriginal genome had survived the empire. The languages had survived silence. The stories had survived time. And together they were reassembling the oldest mirror of humanity ever found. The stories were no longer echoes. They were evidence. What began as myth had become map, and now science itself would step into the dreaming. Modern science had searched the stars for origins, the fossils for proof, and the genes for truth. But in the heart of Australia, the answers had always been sung, not written. Aboriginal cosmology never divided matter and spirit, the seen and the unseen. Every rock, tree, and wind carried energy, a consciousness scientists are only now beginning to glimpse. Physicists speak of quantum entanglement, of particles that remain linked across vast distances. Aboriginal elders spoke of songlines, invisible threads connecting every place, every being, every time. Two languages, one truth. Everything is connected. In the dreaming, creation was not a one-time event. It is ongoing. The ancestors are not gone. They move through the land, reborn as the next generation, the next wave, the next breath. It's a worldview that doesn't separate science from story, because in their culture, both are the same way of knowing. Neuroanthropologists on studying Aboriginal rituals found heightened brainwave patterns resembling deep meditative states, similar to monks in the Himalayas or shamans in the Amazon. In those moments of trance, the line between body and land disappears. It's not mysticism, it's measurable consciousness. One elder described it simply: when we dance the dreaming, we're not remembering the past, we're keeping the world alive. Modern cosmology says matter is neither created nor destroyed, it only changes form. Aboriginal spirituality has always said the same: life never ends, it only transforms. Science calls it conservation of energy. The dreaming calls it eternity. The two worlds were never at odds. They were two halves of the same ancient song. Science and spirit meet. Two mirrors facing the same truth. The circle was never broken, only waiting to be seen. 65,000 years. the oldest unbroken story ever told. And still it continues. The genes whisper the same truth as the songs. Humanity did not simply pass through this land, it became this land. Every cell, every grain of ochre, every rhythm of the didgeridoo carries the memory of that first migration, the first step out of Africa that found its forever home at the edge of the world. When scientists trace the human tree, all branches meet at the same root. When Aboriginal elders sing the dreaming, all paths meet at the same circle. Two languages again describing one reality. We are all connected, not metaphorically, but biologically. The Aboriginal genome is not just a relic of deep time. It is a record of endurance, of a people who survived isolation, ice ages, invasion, and erasure. They endured because their identity was never in buildings or empires. It was in relationship, to land, to ancestors, to each other. Today, across Australia, new generations are returning to the old ways, reviving languages once silenced, painting stories once forbidden. Scientists work beside elders, decoding ancient knowledge not as superstition, but as science, knowledge of ecology, astronomy, and healing. And slowly the world is beginning to listen. In a century obsessed with progress, the oldest culture on Earth offers a lesson not in technology, but in time. That survival is not conquest. That wisdom is not written in books, but in belonging. If humanity is a story, then the Aboriginal people are its prologue, and also its reflection. They remind us that the beginning and the end are not separate. They are the same circle, endlessly turning. Above them, the same stars that guided their ancestors still burn. Below, their footprints still mark the earth. And between the two, spirit and science, past and present, the song continues. Because this is not just Australia's story, it is ours. The story of how humanity found itself and how it almost forgot. And perhaps by remembering them, we remember ourselves.